lying on the ground, was a figure. It was a woman, but she wasn't human. Adam had seen many different species in his years of service, but this one was like nothing he had ever encountered before. Her skin was an unusual shade of silver, almost metallic, and her hair shimmered with an iridescent glow. Her eyes, though closed, had an odd, captivating quality, as though they could see through the very fabric of space. Her body was battered, with cuts and bruises that seemed to cover every inch of her skin. The strange armor she wore was dented and scorched, clearly the result of some kind of violent encounter. Adam quickly knelt beside her, heart pounding. He knew she was still alive, but barely. Her breathing was shallow, and her pulse was weak. Despite the urgency of the situation, Adam's instincts kicked in. He had been trained for moments like this. His hands moved quickly and decisively as he assessed the situation. He had no idea who this woman was, or how she had ended up here. But one thing was clear: she needed help. Taking a deep breath, Adam pulled out his medkit and began to work. He cleaned her wounds as best as he could with the limited supplies he had. There was no time to waste. The planet was known for its harsh conditions, and any delay in treating her injuries could mean the difference between life and death. Adam's mind raced as he worked. Who was she? How had she ended up on this desolate planet? There were no signs of a ship or any other means of travel nearby. The answers to those questions would have to wait. For now, his focus remained on keeping her alive. As he tended to her, Adam couldn't help but notice how different she was from anyone he had ever helped before. Her features were sharp and regal, with high cheekbones and a strong jawline. Her silver skin, despite the dirt and blood, still seemed to shimmer faintly in the sunlight. There was an otherworldly beauty about her. But it was the kind of beauty that made you feel as though you were in the presence of something far beyond your understanding. Minutes turned into hours, as Adam carefully treated her injuries. He worked tirelessly, trying his best to stabilize her condition. There was no way to know for sure if she would survive, but he wasn't ready to give up yet. He had seen people survive worse injuries than this, and he would do everything in his power to make sure she had a chance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Adam was finished. The bleeding had stopped, and her wounds were dressed as best as he could manage. He leaned back, wiping the sweat from his brow as he looked down at the woman. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, as if on cue, the woman's eyes fluttered open. Adam froze. For a split second, he felt as though he were looking into the depths of the universe itself. Her eyes were a deep, radiant purple, and they seemed to hold a world of knowledge and power within them. He couldn't explain why, but the moment she looked at him, Adam felt as though she could see every part of him, every thought he had ever had. The woman blinked, her expression one of confusion and pain. Adam immediately leaned forward, ready to offer reassurance, but before he could say anything, she whispered something in a language he didn't understand. She tried to sit up, but the pain from her wounds stopped her. Adam gently placed a hand on her shoulder, urging her to stay still. "Take it easy," he said softly. "You're safe now. I've treated your wounds, but you need to rest." She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze still intense. There was something almost regal about her, even in her weakened state. Adam felt the weight of her stare, as though she were sizing him up, trying to figure him out. It was then that he realized she wasn't just any alien. She was different. There was something about her that went beyond her appearance, something powerful. The woman finally nodded slightly, as if she understood, but she didn't speak again. Instead, she looked around the barren landscape, her eyes searching the horizon as though expecting something, or someone, to appear. Adam followed her gaze, but he saw nothing. The planet was as empty as it had been when he first arrived. He turned back to her, his curiosity growing. Who was she, really? And how had she ended up here? Before he could ask, the woman closed her eyes again. her face softening as if she were slipping back into unconsciousness. Adam sighed and leaned back, allowing himself a brief moment to rest. But his thoughts were far from calm. He couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something far bigger. There was more to this woman than met the eye, and Adam was about to find out just how much more. Adam watched her carefully as she rested, unsure of what to do next. He knew she wasn't in the best condition, but at least she wasn't as close to death as she had been before. The woman's breathing was steadier now, but the confusion in her eyes remained. Adam had seen that look before, but never in someone like her. She wasn't just any traveler or wanderer. There was something about her that suggested she was far more than she seemed. The silence between them grew heavy, and Adam found himself unsure of what to say. He wasn't accustomed to this, caring for someone who was so far beyond his understanding. His entire life had been spent working with ordinary people who needed medical help, people who came to him with wounds he could easily treat. But this woman, she was different. Every part of her, from her appearance to the aura she gave off, was alien. She didn't belong here, and Adam couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just stranded on this planet by accident. Her body, though frail from her injuries, still carried an undeniable strength. Her muscles were taut even in rest, as if her body was designed for power, and her eyes, those striking purple eyes, seemed to pierce through everything, as though they could see into the very soul of anyone who crossed her path. Adam stood up slowly, feeling the need to stretch his stiff muscles. The planet's harsh environment was not conducive to rest, but he needed to keep moving. He had to find a way to get her to safety. It was clear that she needed help, but what kind of help could he give her? What kind of person was she? Why had she been so badly hurt, and who was responsible? His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed the woman stir again. Her fingers twitched, then moved slightly, as if testing her strength. Slowly, she opened her eyes once more. This time Adam could see that her gaze wasn't as confused. She was more aware of her surroundings. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. The words were spoken in a language Adam didn't understand, yet somehow he knew what she was asking. It was as though her tone and body language carried the meaning behind her words. Adam hesitated, unsure how to respond. He had no way of knowing if she was even capable of understanding him, but he couldn't just leave her there, stranded and alone. "You're on a desert planet," he said carefully, choosing his words slowly. "I found you injured. I've been trying to help you." She blinked, processing the information. There was a long silence, and Adam could feel her eyes on him again, intense and searching. It was almost as if she were trying to figure him out. Adam shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, feeling like an intruder in her presence. She wasn't just any stranger. There was something in her eyes, a weight of responsibility, of knowledge, that told him she had seen much more than he could ever imagine. She wasn't a victim of circumstance. She was someone who had been through far worse and had somehow come out the other side. The woman sat up slowly, winching as her injuries made themselves known. Adam quickly reached out to steady her, but she pulled away, motioning for him to step back. She didn't need his help. Adam respected that, even though he knew it was hard for her to ignore the pain. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, before looking around again. It was clear that she was processing everything, but there was still something in her that seemed distant, as if she was not fully present. Adam watched her carefully, trying to read her. Her body language told him that she was strong, but even more than that, it told him that she wasn't the kind of person to easily accept help from others. She was used to being in control, and right now, she was anything but. "I'm Adam," he said, his voice gentle. He couldn't help but feel a connection to this mysterious woman, even though he knew so little about her. "What's your name?" Her expression softened slightly, and she spoke in the same foreign language. But this time, Adam caught the tone of her voice, the way her words sounded different from before. "Naira?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am Princess Naira." Princess? His mind raced. He had suspected that there was something important about her, but hearing her claim such a title made him realize that she was far more than just another traveler. She was royalty, and not just any royalty. Her presence, her air of authority, everything about her screamed power. "Princess Naira!" Adam repeated, trying the name out for the first time. It felt strange on his tongue, but he had to admit that it suited her. The word carried weight. It spoke of a legacy, of a history that Adam couldn't even begin to understand. Naira closed her eyes again, rubbing her forehead, as if to gather her thoughts. Adam stood back, giving her space. He wasn't sure what else to say, but there was a growing sense of curiosity and respect for this woman, who had somehow ended up in such a strange place. What kind of princess was she? What kind of power did she wield? What was she really running from? And why had she ended up in the middle of nowhere, wounded and alone? Are you a warrior?" Adam asked before he could stop himself. Naira's eyes snapped open, her gaze sharp. For a moment, she said nothing, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. She was considering whether or not to answer. And then, slowly, she nodded. It was subtle, but Adam noticed the change in her demeanor. The hint of vulnerability that had been there before vanished, replaced with something colder, more guarded. She was no longer just a woman who needed help. She was someone who had seen war, someone who had fought. "I am," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam took a step back, processing her words. He had always known that the universe was filled with creatures and beings beyond his understanding. But this woman, this princess, was something different. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a fighter, someone who had lived through battles and bloodshed, someone who had been forged in the fires of war. "What happened to you?" Adam asked, his voice quiet. "Who did this to you?" Naira's eyes darkened, and for a moment, Adam thought he saw something cold and dangerous flash across her face. But just as quickly, the moment passed. She turned her gaze away, looking into the distance, as if she were seeing something far beyond the horizon. "It doesn't matter," she said, after a long pause. "What matters is that I survived." Adam didn't press her for more answers. He could see that she wasn't ready to speak about it, and he didn't want to push her. The princess had been through more than he could comprehend, and right now she wasn't ready to share her story. That was okay, but Adam was certain of one thing. There was much more to Naira than met the eye. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the barren landscape, Adam knew that their journey was just beginning. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he had a feeling that the answers he sought would come in time. For now, all he could do was wait and keep her safe. And as he watched Naira stare out into the distance, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was someone destined for greatness, or perhaps for something far darker. The days began to blend together as Adam and Naira settled into a routine. The planet they were on, though desolate, had a quiet beauty about it. The temperature fluctuated from harsh, burning heat in the daytime to a biting cold at night. Yet the pair had managed to make a small camp where they could survive, at least for now. Each day, Adam continued to tend to Naira's wounds. The cuts and bruises that had once been so severe were beginning to heal, but there was something more to her injuries than Adam could understand. Despite his medical knowledge, he couldn't find any explanation for the way her body healed so quickly. It was as if she wasn't human, certainly not like anyone he had ever encountered. Naira had yet to speak much about herself or her past. Each time Adam asked, she would avoid his questions, preferring to focus on the survival tasks. She would help him gather food, repair their shelter, and keep watch, but she never revealed anything more about the life she had left behind. Adam didn't push, sensing that she wasn't ready to talk. Instead, he spent his time thinking about the strange woman who had saved his life with nothing more than a glance. The mystery of her was captivating. Her eyes, that deep, otherworldly purple, haunted him. There was a power in her gaze that made him feel both small and amazed at the same time. He knew deep down that Naira wasn't just a lost soul stranded on a planet, that she was a force, one that had been through unimaginable trials. But what were they? Who had she been running from? And why? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the cold air of the night began to settle in, Naira broke the silence. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly, her voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of something dark. Adam looked up from the fire he was tending, his eyes meeting hers. "What is it?" he asked, his tone gentle, not wanting to push her too much. He had learned to be patient with her. In the time they had spent together, he had come to understand that Naira was not someone who would share her past lightly, but this moment felt different. She was ready to speak. "I am the last of my people," she said, her voice soft but firm. "My race, we were once great warriors, powerful beyond anything you could imagine." Adam listened closely, sensing that she was about to share something important. "We lived across the galaxy, spreading our influence wherever we went," Naira continued. "We were proud, strong, but with strength came enemies. Those who feared us began to conspire against us, bringing war upon us. My people fought back, but we were outnumbered. They destroyed my world, my family, my home." Adam's breath caught in his throat. He had suspected that Naira had a past filled with violence and conflict, but hearing her speak about it so plainly was something else entirely. She wasn't just a survivor. She was someone who had lived through the fall of an entire civilization. "I was exiled," Naira said, her gaze distant, lost in memories that Adam couldn't imagine. "I was sent away to protect me, to keep me from the war that destroyed everything I knew. But I couldn't hide forever. I couldn't stay in the shadows." She paused for a long moment, looking down at her hands, as if searching for the right words. "I've spent my life running, hiding. The enemies of my people still search for me. They want me dead. They want to erase the last of my bloodline." Adam felt a cold chill run through him. The weight of her words settled over him, heavier than anything he had ever experienced. Naira wasn't just a princess in exile. She was the last of her kind, the last hope for her people, and she had been hunted for years by those who wanted to destroy her. "And now?" Adam asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Naira replied, her eyes lifting to meet his. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. I thought I could run forever. But I can't. I've been alone for so long, and I'm tired of it." Adam could see the exhaustion in her eyes. It wasn't just physical. It was the kind of weariness that came from years of constant running, from being hunted by forces far more powerful than herself. Naira had never known peace, not in the way Adam had. He had always lived a life where he could find moments of calm and happiness, but for her, there had only been chaos, destruction, and solitude.
"You don't have to be alone," Adam said softly, moving closer to her.
He didn't know what he was offering exactly, but he couldn't help the feeling that had begun to grow in his chest. He had always helped people, but this was different. Naira wasn't just a patient. She was someone who needed something more than medical care. She needed companionship. She needed someone who would stand by her side no matter the danger. Naira looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I know," she whispered. Adam smiled slightly, though the weight of the situation still hung over him. The more he learned about Naira, the more he realized how little he knew about the universe she had come from. And as much as he wanted to help her, he couldn't deny the fear that began to settle in his stomach. He was no warrior. He was a medic, a healer. How could he protect someone like her from the dangers that stalked her? But in the end, he didn't need to be a warrior. He didn't need to fight her battles. What Naira needed now was someone who cared about her, someone who would stand with her when she had nothing left to stand on. "Thank you," Naira said softly, her voice filled with a rare hint of emotion. "I didn't think I would ever find someone who cared. You've given me more than just healing. You've given me hope." Adam didn't know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as someone who could give someone else hope. He had always just done what needed to be done, but seeing the gratitude in Naira's eyes, hearing the tremor in her voice, made him realize something. In this vast, dangerous galaxy, he was the one thing that could offer her some semblance of peace, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The fire crackled softly between them, casting flickering shadows on their faces. The silence that followed was comfortable, no longer heavy with unspoken words, but filled with understanding. They were no longer strangers. Adam had learned about Naira's past, and Naira had learned that there was someone who would stand by her side, no matter what came next. The danger was far from over. Adam knew that. But for the first time since they had met, he felt a sense of calm. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her face it alone.